I mean, I heard a buzz on the industry years ago. I mean, about the Aurora, original Aurora. So that's when I first heard about it. I'm sure Lynx knows this, that it tracked the entire Daft Punk album using Lynx Auroras. So that was my first use of them, and I was very impressed because they're very, very transparent. That's what, and I mean that goes for the new Aurora N2, which I think just improves on it. But the original ones were very transparent, and that's what I really look for in conversion, because I don't want the conversion to add character. I'd rather do that if I need something other than a completely clean path and want to add character like Transformers or something. I'd rather do that outside of the converter. A couple of months ago, I recorded a drum session with using the Aurora N, and it's amazingly good. It's and I did some measurements on it. I don't have an audio precision. I just did it with going in and out, and looking at the harmonic distortion and neuromodulation distortion on using just an FFT program, and it definitely tested better than any other converter I've seen. I think audibly it bears that out. And what I really noticed doing a drum session with it, it was clean. Almost any good converter these days seems clean. But the thing about this is that the tracks recorded flat, just from preamps to converter, they seem to respond to EQ better than most recordings I did. There was a certain reality to, realness to this one, and EQing tracks didn't sound like adding, like I usually think of adding EQ to tracks. It sounded very integrated into the track. It was just very clean. On the tests I did, if I just had a single tone at any level and checked harmonic distortion, it was low, and a lot of them were low. Where it really shined was what I think is a very, very difficult test for any piece of audio equipment to perform in, is taking 18K and 19K equal level just below clipping and look at the intermodulation products. That shows you something. And the Aurora was definitely quite a bit ahead of every other converter I tested. Even though they all were way down, I didn't think any differences would be audible. But I guess when you're dealing with a complex waveform rather than just twin tones, I guess some of those products come up a bit, and you could really hear that the Aurora was cleaner. I started like just out of high school in 1970. See, I'm a real old fart here. So, and I had a demo studio in Rochester, New York, where I grew up, and worked with a lot of local bands. A lot of great musicians came out of there at the time. So I got to record Steve Gadd and Tony Levin, and Lou Gramm was in a band there. So I mean, I was exposed to really top quality musicians at an early age. And even though I'm not a musician myself, I really got to appreciate it. And I love music, and I love electronics and audio. So it was just a normal way for me to go. And my first records really were Chuck Mangione. He was from Rochester also. So his first really big album that was a top charting hit in 1977 was Feel So Good. So that was really where my career started, I guess, in the late 70s. I moved to LA in 1978, late 1978. And soon after, I was called for an overdub session. I was actually, James Newton Howard was producing a rock band at the time, before he was a film composer, DFK Band it was called. And Andy Johns was engineering, and I was talking to James because I liked a lot of the records he produced. And Andy couldn't make it one night, so James asked me if I'd like to do the overdub sessions that night. So I did, and then I figured I'm going to make the best possible rough mix that I can of this. They were on a label called ARC, which was a division of Columbia that was Earth, Wind, and Fire's label. George Massenburg did their engineering, and George heard my rough mix and liked it. So I had a meeting with, the executive, him and Bob Cavallo, the executives at ARC Records, and I didn't get to work on the DFK album any more than that, because Andy came back. But I got on some other projects for ARC, and it ended up that when George was designing his automation system and didn't want to be in the studio as much, I got to work with Earth, Wind, and Fire, and I think that's where it really started, because I was with them for about 3 years. It was probably the greatest experience of my life working with those guys. It was, in the mid '80s, I just started meeting more people. I engineered and mixed that. It was a big hit. That was called "That's What Friends Are For" with Dionne Warwick, Elton John, Gladys Knight. So I did all the recording and overdubs and mixing on that. And then I started getting called more for mixing. So I mixed most of Mr. Mister's "Welcome to the Real World" album. I didn't mix Broken Wings. That was done before I got the project. But did mix Kyrie Liaison and and other hits from that. Mixed a couple songs for Talking Heads, and I was just got more into the mixing aspect of it, mostly in the '80s. And then I was hired by Sony in the early '90s. This happened because I was doing, in the '80s, I was doing mixing for Michael Bolton when he was a producer and also as an artist. And he brought me in on an album that Walter Afanasieff produced. This was in '92, Time, Love, and Tenderness album. So I mixed a lot of that album. Tom Lord Alge mixed some things on that too. But usually I was brought in when somebody was overbooked. But anyways, I mixed that, and they were happy, and Tommy Mottola liked it, so he wanted to move me back to New York and to mix Mariah Carey records. And then after that, stayed in New York for a while, but then I moved back to LA, and was there for another 7 years. That's with Daft Punk and everything, that era. Actually, I moved there right after we did the Daft Punk album. I thought at that point there was more opportunities there. And now that's, I'm still working, work at home. I left LA. I'm in Las Vegas now. I more work because I want to and not because I have to there. I still have to, but not as much as living in LA. So anyways, that's my story. No, not really. Everything works. I'm sure the support would be great because, having talked to Albert and everything, and, it seems like everybody, Albert anyways, very knowledgeable, and I haven't talked to engineering or support there, but I haven't need to, because it just plug the thing in and it works and it sounds great. Oh, one thing I wanted to add about the Aurora, and that is, I think, an incredible feature, is that micro SD recorder in it. Because if I was doing a tracking session, live band, where we're doing different takes and everything, I would just throw a terabyte micro SD or 512 gig in there and just let it run all day. Now, 512 gigs, if you're running at 48K, is 30 hours at 32 tracks. 15 hours at 96K, 32 tracks. So you could back up an entire session, have every take, everything everybody's done through the whole day on that micro SD card, and then go grab it into Pro Tools if you need something from it. I think that's amazing. I think it's like, a lot of people have said, "Oh, you can't punch in, you can't use it as a recorder." I totally think it wasn't even designed for that. It was designed for having a backup of everything that happens. So I think that's great.